The following live broadcast is rated ESV PG. Parental guidance is suggested. Is sexism still a problem? Have women finally found equality? Or is it already equal and they're still fighting for something they already have but can't see? Do we have further to go or have we finally achieved it? Tonight's show, we're going to talk about just that with our panel, with a man and a woman who feels very strongly on opposite ends of the spectrum. So it should be a good show. Get ready to duke it out right now. You two ready?
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, we'll see what happens. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Ear, Shoulder, Voice. We're glad to have you here tonight. Tonight's topic, we're going to be talking about something that has been on people's minds, but a lot of people think it disappeared, especially whether you're talking to the male or female of the species here, because a lot of men think that sexism really isn't an issue anymore, and a lot of women say, yes, it is. So we're going to find out between everybody, because today's topic is It's a Man's World, Tackling Sexism. It's a Man's World has been a phrase that's existed for a long time. Is the phrase itself sexist? We're going to talk about that. But not only that, we want to hear your opinions on there as well. So feel free to chat live during the broadcast. Everything you say we'll respond to live with you. So feel free to share any opinions, no matter how deep, how off color. We don't care. If it's the way you feel, we want to talk to you about it. Because this show is here for you. Don't forget while you're here to like, share, subscribe, and follow Ear Shoulder Voice on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We'll be on all that, and YouTube if I didn't say it. All right, so other than that, we don't have a show without a panel, and this panel is just ready. They got their boxing gloves on. We're going to see what happens, so let's bring them in. All right, our first panelist tonight, of course, he's been a regular panelist lately, so we're glad to have him on here still. Please welcome back Anthony. Anthony, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I am amazing. So I'm going to ask you, Anthony, the topic of the show. It's a man's world. Do you agree with that?
Well, of course.
You do. That's it. That's it. You just agree. It's a man's world.
Look,
still.
man, I'm here to hear the other side.
Well, we're going to hear the other side.
I would normally have my boxing gloves on, but I ate way too much pizza, so I'm very tired. So
all right. Well, we'll see. We'll see if Elena can fire you up. Because please welcome back to the panel, Elena. Elena, how's it going?
Wonderful.
So Anthony's pretty much given up his boxing gloves for this fight right now. Do you figure it's going to be an easy knockout for you?
Kind of, but I feel like once we start talking, he's gonna wake up a little bit.
That's probably going to be the case. So I'm going to ask you the same thing I had actually asked Anthony. The title of the show, It's a Man's World. Do you agree with that or not?
I think that it's unfortunate that it's still a man's world.
You think it's improved over time?
Of course it has. Like, women have the right to vote now, so of course there's been some sort of improvement, but I don't
all
think
right, so over the last 100 years, you got the right to vote. That's pretty much all we've done. Is that what you're saying?
That's not all I'm saying, but
I know you're not. I know you're not. But it's hard to pick it out because there are so many little things that men often miss that women are still struggling with, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, of course.
All right, well, we got Stefani Bryan here. Says Brian is here. Brian, glad to have you here. And Joe is also here. Good evening. Good evening to you, Joe. All right, so let's just start with you, Elena, because Anthony, he's just here to sit and listen apparently for a moment. He's here to learn. So what are some daily struggles that you go through that you don't think people often see?
To start on like a smaller scale, it's just like professionalism. I'm viewed as unprofessional if I go to work without makeup on, and men don't have to deal with that.
Have you seen yourself without makeup, though?
I go through my normal life without makeup.
But I actually want to bring that up because that was a good point you just said right there. You have to put your makeup on to look good, and it's not right if you don't. But right before the show, you look, oh my God, I look terrible and all this stuff, and you actually fixed yourself up there. So what's the difference in you thinking of that and someone else telling you to do that?
Oh, the difference with that was just my hair looked a little dirty, so I put some dry shampoo in it because I'm in cosmetology school right now, and eventually I'm going to need clients, and I don't want my clients to think I have dirty hair.
That's actually fair on that, especially if you're in cosmetology. Joe's here. It says it's a man's world unless you go to court for children, then it's a woman's world. The court system is often in certain states, especially Michigan's one of them that we live in. It is a mother's state. So, do you think that that's still the case, like around the country at all? Do you see any more of that happening? Okay.
Who, me?
Okay, good point. Either one of you actually was good. All right, yeah, Anthony is really tired.
A lot of times that is the case, right? It's rare. It's a man, if they're going to court for their children, they have to fight their ass off. And they have
I'd
to
agree with
prove
that.
ridiculously that the mother is unfit, right? Otherwise, the mother gets the child.
Now, where does that lie in sexism? Because sexism works both ways at the same time. And the court system obviously is geared towards the mother, and that's sexist to the father in any case. Why do you think that is?
Stop running.
What?
I think that's Brandon in the background. I think it's mostly because, like, I mean, when it comes to children specifically, women put in that 9 months to make sure that this child was alive and okay, while the man did not do that. So I think
Okay.
that might have something to do with that.
All right, Anthony, counterpoint? Come on, Anthony.
All right. See, I don't have an issue with courts having bias towards the mother, right? Because there is a big kind of predisposition between men and women. Women tend to be more nurturing to where men tend to be more logical, right? And less emotional. So 9 times out of 10, the woman will be the better fit to take care and nurture a child than the man, right? But that's not, it's not right that they automatically assume that, and you have to prove, like, you shouldn't have to prove to the extent that has to be done for the father, in some cases, to get custody.
Well, let me ask Elena, just based on that comment, right, that Anthony had just made, is that not sexist in itself to assume the woman to be the nurturer and the man to be the more logical thinker?
Well, yeah, of course. However, I don't like that you guys are using the word logical. I don't think men
I was
just by
repeating
nature are
him.
more logical. And I don't think women by nature are more emotional.
But that's a fact. They've done studies.
Oh, that
of
is a
women.
fact. Men are
It
more
is.
logical
They've
than
done-
women. Okay.
All right. It's not based on being a fact of whether or not men
I'm
women are
not
more
talking
logical.
about the definition of logical. I'm talking men like to deal with fucking things that are actual tangible, and women tend to be more emotional and nurturing. They've
Is
done
that-
studies all over the world to say when you let men and women choose whatever field they want to go into, the differences in type of fields, women choose the more nurturing and those types of jobs, and men choose engineering and the STEM fields, right? So when you allow freedom of choice between men and women, there is a clear divide, right?
Do you not think that that's maybe an old way of thinking, though? I mean, as much as women struggle to go forward in the workplace and be their own person, do you think it's an old way of thinking of saying, of the court system themselves, to say they're more nurturing and they're more mother-like, they're more like to have the child? Is that not fighting against some of the stuff that women were fighting for? Either one of you can answer.
I'm sorry. Will you repeat the question? Brandon was
All right.
talking to me.
Women have been fighting more for the equality and saying they can do anything a man does. Well, the old way of thinking is that the woman is the more nurturing one, as Anthony was saying. Mm-hmm. Okay, so does the court siding with a mother go against that, what they've been struggling for?
I think a little bit. I think that in cases of custody, and I think that it has changed a little bit. I know in the past it has totally been kids with the mom unless the mom is completely unfit, and we have so much proof of that. I think that now, because I know back when I was growing up and my friends' parents were going through divorces and their parents were going through custody and stuff, the regular was that the dad got every other weekend. Unless proven otherwise. It's not like that anymore. Now it's 1 week on, 1 week, 1 week with mom, 1 week with dad.
I do think the system
In cases
is
of
turning a little
civil divorces and civil custody battles.
Bill's here. He says he's not sexist. He believes every woman should have the chance to get and achieve anything they want. They should all have a great paying job and use the money to take care of their man. All right,
Amen, brother. Amen.
Amen is right. Stefani Brian's here, says Brian's here again. Well, glad to have you again, Brian. Uh, glad to have you on there. So, my question on that, okay, let's go to the jobs. He says they should all have a great paying job. Do men and women still make the same amount of money?
No.
Okay, what is the difference, do you think, Elena? Why do you say no?
Because there's studies that have shown men make more money than women.
Well, what about the career paths they choose?
No, of course that's a thing, and we've talked about this on a previous show. I think at one of my old jobs, I was working the exact same position as someone else. I got hired in before they did, and I had more background experience than they did, and he was making more money than me.
That happened. As we talked also about, and you're right, we just talked about this on a previous show. That works the same with two guys going for a position. Sometimes somebody with more experience for one reason or another still gets the job. But what I'm referring to is the type of jobs that they're actually typically known for. Women have always been in the field of nursing, teaching, specific fields that are usually run by women, where men get a lot of more trades jobs. Well, those jobs pay different rates. Now, why do you think they're paid different rates? Do you think it's because women more control the field? Or the jobs just don't deserve the equal pay? Before you answer that, though, I will, however, say I do believe teachers deserve to make a hell of a lot more than they do, male or female.
I agree with that. I think that with those jobs that you mentioned, teachers and nursing, and then men that are in trades, those men that are in trades did not go and get four-year degrees in college, where those teachers and nurses did. So I do think that those teachers and nurses should be making more money than those people in the trades. But I also think that that's not like a man or a woman thing. I think that that's just a job in general, if that makes sense.
Please elaborate.
What do you mean?
Why does a 4-year degree warrant making more money?
I broke up as you said that. I'm sorry.
Well, he asked, why does a 4-year degree mean you make more money?
Because you put in money to go get that education. So you should
But
be getting a
teaching takes a
payout
degree.
from that.
But welding, I mean, there's still maybe not the same schooling.
You have to take education in trades, and a lot of times it's 2 years, and then you still have to do continuing education, and you're constantly having to do stuff. So just because you don't have a college degree and a 4-year standard degree, you still have to pay in to take schooling.
No, and I
Right.
understand, and I'm in a
trades.
trade. Right, I'm in a trade right now with my cosmetology school. I'm only going to be in school for 10 months. However, that's what I'm paying to go to school and what I'm going to have to pay to uphold my license when I'm done with school is much less than those people that did go to college.
Okay, well, let's take the same job, for example. Do you think, for example, a lawyer? Okay, both those very expensive schools to go to, very expensive degrees. Do you think women are still underpaid in that field? Has anybody looked into that?
I haven't looked
For that job specifically, no, I have not looked into
Well, what
that.
about example of any job that can be taken by men or women?
Well, every
you
job
think
can be
they're fair?
taken by a man or a woman.
Well, they can be, but I'm saying what we were talking about was designations of jobs for a long period of time. Like teachers typically were female for a long time. Still, you're going to find far more female teachers than you are male, partly because maybe from the mothering aspect of it. You know, they're better with kids or something like that. But if a guy went for the same job teaching, do you think he would make less than a woman
No.
or more?
Yes.
You think he would make more, and why?
Well, if you look at like high schools, a lot of times the principals and the vice principals are men because those are more high paying jobs than women who are normally the teachers.
Okay, what about you, Anthony? What do you think? Do you think in that situation the men would make more or less or equal?
I think it depends, right? I don't like the idea of saying the sole reason why somebody makes more than somebody else is because of their gender.
I agree with that, but I also believe that there are.
I believe
places
it
that
happens
exist.
from time
Yes.
to time, right? There are some fields where the woman makes less, but I don't feel like at all times it's because they're a woman, right? And I don't like the mentality of I make less money solely because I'm a woman, right? Or he makes more money solely because he's a man. I think that's a bad way of thinking because it kind of just furthers this woe is me because I am a woman, or that guy's always going to be better because he's a man. right?
All right. Well, we have another panelist joining us right now. Please welcome back to the show. She's been on a long hiatus. We're glad to have her back. Gail Marie, how are you doing?
Hi
Hello.
everyone. Oh my gosh, I miss you guys so much.
Oh boy. We know you're How that caught me for a minute. How you doing, Gail Marie?
You know, life is good. Just wish could, win the lottery or something. That would be nice. But besides that, life is pretty good. So
All right. So, Gail Marie, have you been following along with this topic at all?
I have not. No, sorry, I just got into the conversation.
Oh, no, that's okay, no problem. What we're talking about currently is sexism and pay in the workplace. Do you think sexism is still a problem when it comes to equal pay for women? I'm glad we got another woman on the panel as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I think for centuries, I was just watching Reign on Netflix because I have nothing else to do with my life. And it was about Mary, Queen of Scots. And she had to go through so much just because she was a woman with a crown. She was actually eventually killed because a man didn't want her on the throne. So, from that amount of time, men have not respected women, in my opinion. And I think the world is changing and we're getting better, which is really good. But I think there's still that disparity between, a man and a woman doing the same work and not getting paid as much.
All right. Well, Joseph here says the women honestly don't get the credit they deserve. Do you two feel that way?
In some aspects, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with her.
Can you give an example where you think that has happened?
I've talked to many men in my personal life that either want children or have had children that said, "Oh no, if men had the kids, I wouldn't want kids."
If men had the kids, well, we'd be assholes for sure when we do it because women go through enough emotional stuff having kids by far. Could you imagine if a man did it? You would have no building left. Your holes in every wall.
But women are emotional.
Yeah.
Well, women are emotional. Men are physical with their emotions
than men, right?
Yes.
That is. I don't care who you are.
The general consensus.
I disagree with that. I disagree
so you're not
with that.
an emotional person at all.
I didn't say I'm not emotional. But I am saying I'm not more emotional than most men.
They just show it in different ways.
Yeah.
Well, I said men often go the physical route with their emotions.
That
when
makes sense.
they get pent up and they express it physically. But the difference in a guy typically is a guy when he does that physical act, whatever it's just hitting a wall or hitting a person, in case like bar fights or shit like that, their emotion drops. Like everything goes, they're good now. They've let it all out. Women, I think, don't tend to let that emotion out the same way. So it builds up a lot inside, and that's why people say women fester on things, or they keep thinking about it or bringing it up because it's in their head.
That's entirely where I disagree with you, though.
Okay, well then explain how.
Because when I if I'm super duper duper mad, I'm a crier. When I'm super mad, I cry. I'll go cry. I'll take a shower and I feel better. But a lot of men try to get physical and they hurt themselves, hurt someone else, or they just bottle it all up because they're a man and they can't cry, and then one day they explode.
Okay, well, let's look at that for a minute. A man can't cry. Well, especially in a relationship, women do look to men for comfort. They look for them to be the strong one when they need it. So that's also, in the sense, breeding through guys that we can't cry. We've got to be the strong one.
You got to be a man. Be a man.
Well, that's why I put it in quotes, because I don't believe that.
Right.
Be a man. Grow a pair. Men don't cry.
And you guys have been raised a certain way, unfortunately. And again, I think this is changing for the better. But you've been raised that if you show any emotion, you're less of a person, which is not true at all. And that's why, I can speak freely because my partner has given me permission about this. But I'm with a trans woman, and she grew up as a man. And so because she didn't know she was trans until later in life, she felt like she had to be extra masculine because, that's a whole other issue. But I just feel like in our generations and the generations before us, you were taught that if you show any emotion or if you show any vulnerability, that's weakness. And vulnerability is not weakness. It's very strong to be vulnerable. But I think because of that, and not everyone, everyone is different. Some men are more emotional. Some women are not as emotional. It just depends. But I think that, as men, where did I go?
You're still here.
Okay.
I don't know where you are there.
Yeah.
You're still here for us.
There's just a little circle. So, but I think that I had a point with that. I'm just saying that I think that they bottle it up more because they're taught that you're not allowed to express it. And so it gets worse and worse and worse. But I've done that as a woman too, because I've been taught that you can't show your anxiety, you can't show your depression, you just gotta
Can't show
keep
weakness.
going, so I think it's on both sides, but I think that, yeah, I don't know where I was going.
No. Well, actually, I get what you're saying on there.
Yeah.
Because we both of them bottle them up. I just say when we release them, we often release it differently. I mean, is either one of the women on here going to deny that they don't often hold things back and then bring them up all at once?
Kind of rarely.
But kind
I've
of.
been like working on that, but with myself though. I used to do that all the time. So I've been working on that within myself to not bottle things up and just to speak my mind when things are happening in the moment.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's something.
I'm going to get through a couple of these comments. We're going to go back. So we're lining up on comments here. First, Bill's here. He said, "Front of the court is a bitch," which is true, especially if you're a guy in a mother's state. Some courts are changing that more. I do think guys have a better chance than they used to by far dealing with children. Gabe's here. He says, "Fun fact: women couldn't run in the Boston Marathon until 1972. In 1966, Roberta Gibb hid behind a bush at the start of the Boston Marathon, sneaking into the field." Well, that's cheating.
Yeah.
Like, that's just cheating. Bill's here says men are nurturing and protective of their children if they are a good man, and that goes both ways. Let's hit on that one for a minute on there, because I think they are. I think that's what the courts don't see. I'm going to go to the women on the panel again. Do you feel that there are several cases where the man is the more nurturing one?
Personally, me growing up, both of my parents were very nurturing. My dad has 3 girls, and he was definitely like the stereotypical girl dad. So,
What about you, Gail Marie? Do you?
I think my dad was a little bit more nurturing, but that's how he was raised, because he was raised around all sisters. He was the only boy in his family growing up, and so that's kind of an odd case. But I think there can be some cases where the father takes more of a emotional role, or he takes more of a, there's families where the dad is the stay-at-home dad, and the woman is the one that's working, or maybe they're both working, or maybe as a parent the mom is just, the emotional thing is not her thing, which is not great. If you want to be a parent, you should want to be emotionally involved, but it can be different in different situations.
Anthony, do you think that physical expression plays a big part in that right now? For example, women often do show their emotions more than guys do. That is true. I'll give you that. You bottle it up, but you still show it when you're hurt, and guys hold it back. Do you think that because a guy doesn't show his physical expression of emotion, that he is less emotional?
Not necessarily.
And by the same token, do you think if a woman does, she is more emotional just because she shows it?
No.
What about you
I
two?
wouldn't say that.
What would you
everyone
say?
has a different way of expressing, their emotions, right?
But what they were describing there was often how they act, like their dad's more. When you're growing up, it's pretty much the visual emotion that you see and sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So if a guy, like I'm saying, guys put it out in physically, if a guy's going to court or something, just because he doesn't show how much he cares for the child, does that mean they care for the child any less?
the child might think that.
Yeah, that might come across their minds.
Okay, well, I understand the child might, but I'm talking in a court case when you're going between a man and a woman.
Oh,
No,
you
but I
mean
think
if
that,
they're...
like-
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you're fine.
Is it like, are you talking about maybe like a custody battle,
Possibly
Keith,
a
or
custodial
like...
battle. Probably.
Okay, I mean, I think, again, this comes back to how people are raised, right? I mean, like, my dad is one of the most loving people I've ever known, but he had to work his butt off, so he was not around as much. He doesn't know how to express emotion very well, but, like, when he did it in a way that made me know that I was loved. But as a child, because of that, and because of some other issues, like, I didn't feel as loved, and I didn't feel as taken care of, because he didn't know how to express himself in a certain way. That doesn't mean he's any less of a person or any less of a man, but like I felt that way because he didn't know how to express it in a certain way.
Well, that was a great response, actually. So you're saying that it's probably a good thing for a guy to show his emotion more often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, on there. Now, neither one of you would think less of a guy if he didn't show his emotion? Let's take Brandon. You want to talk about Brandon?
We can. He's listening in the other room.
All right. Matter of fact, he's here. So Brandon says it woke me up, so I might as well participate. Hi, guys.
Hi, Brandon. Sorry we had
Hi,
to wake you up.
Brandon.
All right, so we're glad to have you here, Brandon. So let's ask about Brandon. Would you say he's more an outwardly emotional person, or does he kind of hold it inside?
I feel like he's like changed since we've met almost. I feel like he used to bottle things up a little bit more than he does now, but I feel like now he's working on showing his emotions and not bottling things up because it makes the here and now better than like for when the explosion happens, when everything.
So why did he make that choice to change?
You should ask him.
Okay, so you had no input on that at all.
I think it was something that we talked about, but I don't want to talk about it if he doesn't.
No, you don't
want
have to go
talk
to that detail, but I'm just trying to get an idea if you had some input. Why would you want him to change from bottling it up?
What? Oh, okay.
You got permission?
Yeah. When we first met, he had a big problem, and I feel like stereotypically a lot of men have this problem because they're so taught at a young age to bottle everything up, where when he would bottle everything up and he'd finally get to the top, he'd get really angry. And so it was just like an anger issue. So then we were talking about it, and it's like, hey, if something annoys you in that moment, just be like, hey, this pissed me off. And then 2 weeks from now, when you hit the top, it's not like, oh, well, this happened and this happened and this happened and this happened, and now you're screaming and yelling at the dogs because they just walked into the room.
Fuck these dogs.
I get
How
that
dare
right
they
there.
walk into the room?
Well, that's a lot what I'm getting at too, though. You thought that he wasn't handling his emotions right, so you wanted to turn it to something you can more relate to. In a sense,
I mean, I wouldn't say it wasn't. I wouldn't say I didn't think he wasn't doing it properly. I was like, hey, this is something you want to change. This is how I deal with my emotions. Let's try it.
Now, what if he would have come up to you and
thing.
said, well, what if he would have come up to you and said, you're too outward with your emotions. This is how I deal with my emotions. I need you to start bottling up and getting out there.
Then that could have been a conversation we would have had.
Would you be comfortable with it? What about with you, Gail Marie, if somebody had said that to you?
Well, me and my partner actually have a very interesting dynamic when it comes to this kind of thing, because what we do, which is not exactly the most healthy, and to let the listeners know, I have a trans woman as my partner. We just kind of, when something annoys us, we just kind of like go at each other for a little bit until we calm down enough to talk about it. So like, I guess you can call that an explosion, which is not very healthy. But then once we get that out of our systems, we can be like, hey, what was the actual problem? Like, you don't care about my soda on the counter. Like, that wasn't the issue, you know?
Now that I think is where women are a little bit different a lot of times. And don't get me wrong, I know guys that do the same thing, but it will be that smaller thing that brings up everything they are holding back and not mentioning. Right. And that's why, men always say you're blaming me for something that happened 3 years ago on one day with one word, which is often exaggeration, but not always. I've known them to do it. So moving on to some more comments here. Bill says, I pay for child support at the same time that it is for a child that isn't mine, even after going in front of the court. Ow. How does that work? That's just a little bit fucked. Have you tried to take it back even further? Like, I go to court again or try to file something else? I don't understand why you're paying for a child that isn't mine unless you kind of raise that child its entire life and split up. I don't know actually the legalities of doing that, if that would actually hurt you or be beneficial to you. So just maybe try going back. Gabe's here says custody favoritism changes from state to state. Many favor the women, but places like Nebraska have actual laws for deadbeat dads because abuse is so high there. The larger percentage of children will never see their shitty dads otherwise. And abuse happens on both sides, though. I get that usually it's harder. It's maybe a little bit more common with men. Actually, it's probably a lot more common with men, to be honest. But it happens both ways. And when your state favors one side, you're hurting the other one. And child support also is a thing that they make the men typically pay. It does work both ways. But the mother wins, the man pays. And that in itself is a sexist ruling. Because it's automatically assuming that the man's working and the woman's staying home.
Well, in the case with child support, for as much as I understand, is that whoever has sole custody is the one that's not paying child support. So
But
if they have
in the
50-50 custody... No, I know, but if for parents that do have 50-50 custody, no one's paying child support.
Okay, well, that's... I did know there were times when it was 50-50 custody that there was still child support being paid. So, because... and that was probably, like I said, it goes back to the whole thing, the woman's a stay-at-home mom. She shouldn't be working. She should be taking care of the kid more. The guy knows how to do it. And I think the courts are fucked up. And I think the reason a lot of sexism when in custody battles take place is because of the courts. You know, and
But
they have a
normally-
hard time moving on. Go ahead. What, Anthony?
Normally, with the whole child support thing, they look at both incomes, right? So the mother's income is X, the father's income is Y. The father's income is 3 times that of the mother's.
Right.
There's no way that she can afford to, keep their children living at the same standard. So this is how we do it, right?
Right. Hunter's here. She says, not all men, but a lot, think that women need them. And I think they're intimidated by independent women. I say men like that have big dick energy. Are you intimidated by an independent woman, Anthony?
Hell no.
Well, I am.
I like a challenge.
I'm going to actually agree with that. Kind of am too, because I do have the thing, and I guess it's not just with a man. I've been with men or women, and it's the same thing, that I want to take care of somebody else. It makes us feel good to be able to provide. And when you really like somebody, you want to provide everything for them. And if you're in a situation to do it, what is wrong with being a little bit intimidated by somebody who's trying to do it on their own? I'm not saying it's wrong and you can't learn and work together, but what is wrong with that?
Well, see, and that's, I guess, where I have a different idea of an independent woman, right? Because, yes, we have independent women who take care of themselves, right? But when it comes time to get into a relationship, right, there has to be some sort of, understanding of, and I don't care what relationship you're talking about. In a relationship, you have this where each has to take care of the other, right? So if your independent woman refuses to let the man that she's in a relationship with take care of her at all, fuck her. Because that's not someone you want to be in a relationship. At least that's not someone I want to be in a relationship with.
Okay.
Right? I have no problem being in a relationship with someone who can be independent, but also knows that if we're dating, I'm going to take care of them from time to time, and they'll be okay with taking care of me from time to time. Right? Relationship is a mutual fucking agreement between two people.
You're fading on us a little bit there, Anthony.
Well, and I think, and I might be wrong about this, but I think women are kind of grown up to think that if a man takes care of you, you're weaker, which I don't feel that way at all. But I think, I've never needed to feel independent. Like I've had some mental health issues, so I can only do, like Uber Eats and stuff like that now. So like I would need a partner that can help me with, and it's not like a sugar baby, sugar daddy kind of thing. That's a whole different
Right.
thing. But like, I think there's nothing wrong with, some people like taking care of the other partner and being like, this brings me joy to take care of you. And some people are like, you can pay your bills, I'll pay my bills. But like, again, but again, that kind of shows, like, why would you want to be in a relationship if you don't want someone to be a part of your, I don't know. I just don't get that, I guess.
Well, Bill says... Oh, go ahead, Elena, before we get to that. Go ahead.
Just what I was going to add, like, when I am not in a relationship with somebody, I would consider, like, I'm super independent, and I love that about myself. One of my best friends back home, his name's Mike, he was talking to Brandon about it, because once I become in a relationship with someone who wants to take care of me, I'm like, oh, okay, you can take care of me. Because, like, I like seeing that nurturing side of them, if that makes sense.
Is there any bit that just you like being taken care of, too? More than seeing the nurturing side?
I think it's more seeing the nurturing side of things. But,
Anthony.
Sorry, I had to. I couldn't help it. It just happened.
But there was one day where I was hanging out with my best friend, Mike, and then Brandon, and I asked Brandon to do something so simple just because, like, I just straight up didn't want to do it. And he looks at Mike and was like, how did she function before I came around? He's like, oh, Elena without you can do anything she fucking wants to. And Brandon almost, like, didn't realize that. He's like, oh, yeah, one time Elena called me and she was like, hey, I'm building some furniture. Can you drop off a hammer at my house? I don't have one. He was like, yeah. And he just, like, walked up to my house, dropped off a hammer. I was like, okay, have a good day. Like...
Furniture didn't turn out fine, but, it doesn't matter.
It actually did. I built it all by myself.
There you go.
That
Good
TV
job.
stand is still standing.
Oh, I'm proud of you.
I mean, it's angled like this, but it's standing.
No, it's honestly
it's a
perfect.
little wonky, but
All right, Bill says men make more money because their clothes cost more for one. And
No, they don't.
I don't know how true that is.
Have you
I
looked
do
at
think in the
clothes?
I do think in the high end aspect of clothing, when it comes to like the good suits and stuff, a lot of times they do cost more. But general clothing, I believe women's clothes actually cost more.
It's called the pink tax, love. I mean, it's
Women's
it's
razors
pink tax
are more
for a reason.
expensive. Like, women's
Yeah,
everything's more
That's because of the
expensive.
stubble they have to go through. It's crazy.
Oh, okay.
No, but you're right.
I don't shake. I don't
Can we talk about how sexist your guys' comment was about my furniture not turning out properly
Yeah.
on the Sexism show?
Rude.
Oh, you mean the joke that we made that you don't know how to?
It's a sexist joke. I laughed, but it's a sexist joke.
Absolutely. You have to find the humor in this stuff though in order to go along with it.
Laugh at things, you can't move forward.
That's right.
I laughed at it. I'm just saying it's a sexist joke. You're not helping the cause of stopping sexism by making sexist jokes.
I just explained if you can't laugh about things, you cannot make progress.
So all serious things we should just make jokes about, and that's how they'll all become fixed.
Pretty
We get
much
through a
what
lot of things
comedy
on here.
is.
Yeah.
I disagree with that.
I do believe that. I've even seen women comedians do the same thing. So it doesn't matter. Comedy is poking fun at reality and at serious things that we know.
Oh, yeah.
Bill says it was pronounced incorrectly. It is edumacation. But this is a fact from Bill. In Hazel Park, Michigan, the female teachers have made more money than men for 40 years. That's absolutely true, too.
Well, I used
So that's
to work
one
in
case in the
education,
whole world.
and
It's not the only case.
Well, it's
But-
also based on how many years you've been teaching. Because I was a para and I was going to be a teacher, and you make your pay based on what the county can do for you and how many years you've been there.
And women
So it's
typically
not
stay in the
always-
field longer.
Well, yeah.
That is
I
true.
mean,
Yeah,
but
so.
yeah, that's a whole nother conversation.
Well, and that kind of goes back to my point of just because somebody makes more money doesn't mean it's because they are a man or a woman. There are different factors.
Right,
that
yeah, I
affect
agree with
wage.
that.
I completely agree that there's different factors, but we can't just keep, like, it's the majority. I don't think the majority is a coincidence, like we talked about the other day in our last show. The
Well, the
majority is not
majority-
always a coincidence.
What majority are you talking about, though, Elena? That's
The
what I don't
majority of
understand.
men make more money than women.
How much?
I can Google it right now. Google's free.
All right, well,
Yeah,
you
I
Google that.
understand
I'm going to
that.
get to a comment or two while you Google that
my
real
issue,
quick.
my
Go
issue
ahead.
with that, right? Because depending on what you Google with the wage gap, right, you get different responses depending on what factors they're looking into, right? And once they narrow it down and compare based on the field, the actual profession, it becomes like 97 cents to the dollar, right?
And
Which is
that's
still
not a difference?
will you let me finish, please? Which is still a discrepancy, but when you have people saying women make 20 cents 20 cents less than the men by the dollar because they like to use just the average amount that men make and the average amount that women make, they're kind of not really helping themselves, right? Because it proves by the further you look into and go into detail, it becomes closer to a 1-to-1, right? So how far do you need to go to see that, right? If
Well,
you just
not-
look
Well,
at
if the
average-
I
number
would
that you're
imagine-
happy with is 97 cents, that's still a big problem for me.
I'm not saying that 97 cents is okay, but I'm saying, there's the number 85 cents to the dollar, right? And then you account for this, and it gets smaller. The difference gets smaller, and the further you dig into it, the smaller the number gets, right? So there are other variables that affect the wage gap.
So you're
that-
basically saying look at progress over destination as well. That the fact that it's not as big as they're saying it is right now, we've made the progress, we're going to keep going, it's going to keep shrinking.
Well, what I'm saying is you can do a study, right, and just look at an average, and you're going to get one number. And then when you say women in this field compared to men in this field, you're going to get a smaller difference. At the same day, right? And then you look at women in this position to men in this position, you get an even smaller number,
Okay.
right? And I'm not saying over time. I'm saying this is like you could look it all up in one day. And the further you go in to compare an exact position, right, it becomes such a small difference that how can you say that it's sex
I'm gonna-
is what drives that, right? Because you go.
I'm going to say even a small difference is important, though. Even a small difference.
That way. That way.
Okay, I'm sorry.
My point is, how can you say it's because they're a woman? How far do you have to compare it to pinpoint that?
Because no matter what, there's probably going to be a difference between the two, is what you're saying. Whether it's minor, above or below, how can you say it's only because it's a woman that there is a difference?
And there's so many variables with how people get paid, right?
Okay.
So you just think that the coincidence is that just those men are better at their jobs than those women? It's a
I didn't
coincidence.
say that.
Maybe they've been doing it longer, just like the teachers who have been there longer that we were talking about with Bill's comment are making more money. Maybe men in the field that they're comparing have been there a lot longer than the women, because let's face it, years ago a lot of women couldn't easily get into those fields. So there is something to be said possibly for seniority that could skew those numbers. But I'm going to ask Gail Marie's been kind of silent. What do you think about that?
I think just like, and I don't want to be canceled for this, but I think it's a very similar but not the same thing to race
You're not
issues.
getting canceled.
I know. I've been watching too much YouTube, but
I'll get canceled way before you do. Don't worry.
okay,
Absolutely.
sounds good. I mean, I've only been back for one episode. I can leave again. No, I'm kidding. There's an inherent problem in the system, I think is what Elena is getting at. Did I say your name correctly?
Yes.
I don't know if I did. Okay.
Yes, you do.
But because, okay, so the men have had more seniority because they've had rights and they've gotten, rights is not the right way to put it, but like
Opportunities.
employers look at men more than they look at women because inherently in their brain they think that the man can do the job better. And I'm not saying that every employer thinks that way or every situation is like that, but because they think that way, men have been at companies longer. When a woman is a boss, she's not taken as seriously. They think that she slept to get to the top, you know, all those things. Like, so it's like, it's, again, in my situation specifically, the job that I have, you don't get paid more if you're a man or a woman. You just have to do a certain number of deliveries. Like it's depending on what you can do. But in a lot of today's society and jobs, you have to work twice as hard as a woman, in my opinion, to get the same respect and to get the same payment. I don't know. Like Anthony said, you can look at so many different studies and see what all the numbers say, and like, you know, it's just more of an issue of respect and of being on a level playing field. And I don't think the playing field is getting a lot better. It's getting better, but it's not equal. In my
Sorry
opinion.
to switch your camera positions real quick. I just realized the Sexism show probably shouldn't have two men on top of two women. I was like, so I thought I might want to swap those camera things around a little bit.
You know, Keith, I noticed that, and I was gonna say something, but I wanted to see how long it would take that one to make a comment about how the men were above the women.
Well, I can't move myself pretty much, so that's why I'm stuck here because I'm hosting it. Okay, what you said, Gail Marie, about the corporate world, I do totally believe still exists very heavily, especially women in the top, that it is believed they're not respected the same. It is believed they slept their way up there, and the kind of clothes they often wear will often get them name called to say they're just doing that to try to get somewhere. Okay, and however, Gail Marie, at the same time, I don't remember the next portion because I just read the other comment on there. All right, but I do think when you're talking about the way people think when they look to hire men and women for a job, you're doing with that old dog new tricks routine. So as long as those people that grew up in that era are still out there hiring people, it's kind of something we have to suffer through to a point, but we have to work on getting new businesses and new people to understand the difference if we want to see change. I understand you have to be taken off, Gail Marie. I'm glad
I'm
you
so
stopped by.
sorry. You guys, I've had a lot of fun being here, but you know, the bills call, so I gotta get going. But you guys have a good rest of the night, okay?
I'm really glad you stopped by. We
Bye,
very
Gail
much
Marie.
missed you, Gail Marie.
Okay, bye guys.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, so it's back to us on here. Now let's get through some of these comments. We do have a buttload in here. So we're going to go through these real quick. We'll stop where we have to. Let me go even further up. My God. Okay, we got Cole Orton. I wanted to stop on this one anyway because this was a good point he brought up. Was don't women make less money because usually at some point they get pregnant as a result of maternity leave, which means half wages.
We don't get paid for maternity leave in the United States.
Some places, a lot of businesses do pay for maternity leave.
I wouldn't say most.
It is not mandatory, but it
Right.
is something that exists quite a bit. And that, do you think that that's possibly a good reason that the wages could change though a little bit because they have more to account for?
It could be a factor.
I mean, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we live in a country right now where people are trying to make it illegal to get abortions, but I also can't get paid while I'm having a baby.
Okay, but that really doesn't answer the question.
No.
What's the question?
The thing is the fact that what Colorton's saying, and I don't know.
Well,
obviously,
not
it's
every
not
woman
safe.
gets pregnant, so no, I don't think
I'm
that
not
should.
saying they are, but just like if you go through the health system and government, everybody pays a portion, so that certain people that something happens to can be covered by Medicare, Medicaid, stuff like that. Okay, it doesn't mean everybody's going to need it. Now, the same thing is with hiring. I don't agree with this statement, but it's a great point to look at. Is the fact that is it because of the extra finances they have to go through? Let's look politically for a minute and with government. One of the reasons they were talking about the trans people in the military a few years ago, and they said one of the reasons was the cost that we have to pay for to take care of those things. We're not allowing them because they shouldn't be covered government. That is the same kind of thinking, whether you agree with that or not, by the way. Same kind of thinking that goes along this line. Well, because there's certain things that pregnant women and maternity leave and stuff has to be covered, we pay them less. Do you think that is a factor, whether you agree with it or not, is what I'm asking.
It could be, yeah. I don't agree with it, but it could be a factor.
I definitely don't agree with it. I don't think you should make less money, because that's the same as a guy being on the job and saying, you could be hurt, so we're going to take less money from you in case we have to pay you for workman's comp.
Right.
You know, it's not right, but that's a really good point to look at on there for the reason they might pay differently. Brandon's here, and we got a lot of comments. Says, but there is a mentality in upper management that they can pay women less than their male counterparts because they're less likely to speak up and argue it. Good
Also
job.
a factor.
Good job. Do you think that's an issue as well? Do you speak up and argue if you think you're paying less, or would you? Or do you kind of just stick it out and maybe get upset, maybe bitch with other people, but do you go to management?
No, I have, and I did go to management when I was making less than my other male counterpart, and we both basically got yelled at for talking about our salaries at work. And
That's why
all
you're
that
never
had
allowed to
affect.
talk about it. But a woman,
They
I
can't
think,
stop you. That's the thing. They can tell you, please don't, but they cannot require you to not talk about your wage.
actually, if they put it in paperwork and forms that you sign before starting that, yes, they can.
Really?
As long as you sign something that's stated,
if you
you're
sign,
not allowed to. And it's always fine print in there. I do think it's going to be more common to dismiss a woman who does that because, like was said earlier in there, they fear women that stand up for themselves.
Well, and women tend to be more agreeable.
Mm-hmm.
So they use that and they say, well, chances are they're not going to complain about it, so let's see how much we can get away with.
And when they do, it becomes a fear of that because you've got an independent woman standing up, right? And also says it's not that we are less emotional. Modern masculinity rules taught us kids keep it to ourselves. That is something that was definitely said. We were taught that it's feminine to show emotion, and God forbid that. And I do think we've actually gone really far above and beyond that in today's world.
Yeah.
I do believe it is far more common for guys to show emotion. And there are still people who will make fun of it. And again, you're dealing with old school people. You're dealing with old school dads who say, you better be a fucking man, you'll cry.
Well, and it's
You
not
know.
just the men in society, right? You got to remember that it's men and women back then that perpetuated that. That the woman needs to stay home and the man needs to go out and provide. And if a boy cries, he's not being a man. He needs to grow up, right? It was both sides perpetuated that. So it's one of those things where, yeah, it's changing a whole lot, but what do we do about it?
Well,
I don't have emotions, so I don't know.
Well, you don't, but you got to make sure the next generation is smarter than you were.
Yeah.
You know,
Do we?
people. The
We're not
problem
doing a good job at that.
we have with everything we've been fighting, everything, from
My generation's trying to take away toxic masculinity.
What is toxic masculinity?
yeah, please.
Men bottling up their emotions because they're not allowed to show them. That could
But-
be toxic masculinity.
There are women that very much
So-
approve of that, though. There are
No,
women
and I'm
that
not
don't like
saying
that.
that no women I'm not trying to generalize women, and I'm not trying to generalize men. I'm saying some men have issues with toxic masculinity, and we need to get rid of that.
And that's purely just bottling up your emotions?
No, there's other forms of it too. You said to give
Well,
an
I'm
example.
actually- no,
I'm
hold on, hold on.
legitimately curious as what toxic masculinity is.
I'm on his side here because masculinity is one thing, and I would rate the masculinity as bottling up your emotion, but you use the term toxic masculinity. And I'm curious why that term.
because like just like you said, like using the same example of men bottling up their emotions, they bottle up their emotions and then they get violent and they hurt themselves or they hurt someone else. That could be toxic masculinity. That's a reason that a lot of men are abusers and they hit their partners. It's because of toxic masculinity. They don't want to show their emotions. They bottle them up and then they beat the shit out of their partner.
So is it toxic femininity when a woman gets all pissed off and beats the shit out of her male partner?
Absolutely. However, that doesn't happen as
masculinity?
often.
But it doesn't. I disagree.
Much.
I disagree. I don't. I will agree actually against Anthony. It doesn't happen as often, but I do not. I do disagree that it's different. It is not different in any way, and you are just like we made our sexist joke. That whole toxic masculinity, when it can happen to a man or woman, is a sexist statement as well against men. That if that happens,
it's not because women can be masculine, so it's not. I didn't say it's toxic.
Well, what is the definition of masculine?
It's I can look it up and read you the actual definition, unless you want my opinion on what masculinity. No, I'll read you the definition because that's what you asked for.
Okay, well, let's read on while you're doing that. Bill says, let women get the jobs and take men out on dates. The money that I have spent dating, I would be a millionaire. And again, this is where I think sexism often gets confused for people. Because I've seen people still posting this day and age on Facebook, if you're taking me out, you're paying. If you take a woman out, you pay. And the chauvinism and stuff like that, and chivalry is still around. Do you open the door still for a woman, or is she strong enough to get it for themselves? Do you let her order first? Do you let her choose first? Because a lot of women like that, and they want that. And then we're torn at which route do we take? Do we want to be this person that is the provider they're seeking, or do we want to be this person that just, no, I'll be the woman in the relationship. I'll pick first. I'm not holding the door for you. I'm not doing anything like that. Where's the balance? Because you may be a strong woman, Elena, and I agree with that you should be proud of that you stand up for yourself, but there's a lot of women out there that don't think that way. Are these women less than a person because of that?
No, I don't think that that anyone should be less than.
Okay, what about the guys that do these things for them? That actually bottle up stuff to keep their partner happy?
I don't think anyone should bottle anything up to keep someone else happy. I think that's toxic behavior.
I like that term a lot better, toxic behavior. Did you read,
also,
did you
the definition of masculinity is quality or attributes that regarded as characteristics of men. It doesn't say are men, characteristics of men.
But if you're... Okay,
so beating the shit out of somebody is a characteristic solely of a man?
But that's what it's saying. That is a characteristic of a man. So it is sexist in itself. If a woman does it, it's not toxic masculinity, right?
Well,
no, it still is.
It
is, then
but it's referring to
trait
as a man.
Is when you beat the shit out of somebody, that's a masculine thing to do.
I didn't say when you beat. I said when you bottle your emotions
watching, get on here.
And beat the shit out of somebody.
It could be toxic masculinity. Because bottling your emotions up
is only a masculine thing. It's only a masculine thing.
That's what you guys have said the whole first half of the show, is that men bottle their emotions up. And now that I'm saying it, it's wrong.
Calm down, easy on the panel here for a minute.
I'm fine.
Because it's just getting a little out. No, we are saying that was most common, but you actually disagreed at the start of the show when you said I don't think. I said the biggest problem was men act out on their emotions physically, women tend not to, and you disagreed right at the start of the show that was the case. And then your defense just now was
because you said women bottle their emotions up and then cry about it. You said men deal with their emotions right then and there violently.
But you also followed with, I've been known just to go and cry on my emotions. I'm saying it's more common.
Right then and there. I'm not bottling up my emotions.
When they come out to your partner is the point. When they're actually coming out. Guys cry too, believe it or not. We get hurt, we go cry just the same on our own. Anthony doesn't, but he has his tear ducts removed.
I'm a robot.
He did. But what we're saying is the term itself, you said your generation is trying to get rid of toxic masculinity, and that is your generation is trying to get rid of toxic acts that make you seem like a man, going by the definition of masculinity.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different forms of toxic.
Is a sexist term as well, but nobody looks at it as a problem. Because if it is a problem and it is toxic, it's masculinity, which already by definition refers to acting or doing things like a man. So sexism in comments exists both sides, was the point. Anyway, let's move on a little bit from here. I knew this was going to happen. Okay, my dad was a stay-at-home dad, and her mom worked. That was Hunter who says that right there. I have a little bit of a problem with it, and I'm going to bring up the sexism with my mom. My mom and grandmother were technically my mother and father figures, and they both struggled in the workplace. They made less money as women. It was a lot more common back then, of course, for that to happen and change.
No, but you don't know that it's just because they were women. There could be other reasons they didn't make as much money.
Of course.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There could be.
Denying that and saying that the sole reason they made less money is because they are women is foolish in my eyes.
I think it's foolish for you to look at the majority and just say it's a coincidence.
But the thing is, back then it was a majority. And now I believe that both Anthony is right that it is definitely vastly improved, and you're also right that even a minor difference is a huge difference. Because it's still making somebody feel less than. But my mom worked in the auto industry. She worked in the parts and the body shop departments for cars and stuff like that. She worked in a predominantly male field, and she made less money agreeing with you because of that.
Yeah, back then that was a big thing.
And that was huge back then. Now I see women in the auto industry all the time. Not as much still, because men gear themselves. They like mechanical jobs typically more than women do.
You would be surprised at how many women are in the auto industry right
now. I know there are. I know there's a shit ton, again, with my mom. But mechanics, almost any place you go, it is more likely that a woman wants to be certain jobs like teachers or nursing or caregiving jobs, which is something that women often go for, than it is a mechanic. You will have women, obviously, that want to become a mechanic. But nowadays, I do believe that women who go for a mechanic's job are paid about the same as a guy is. I don't think that has been much different anymore, but it was back then. So I see the improvement we're talking about, too. Well, and as we get through our plethora of more comments, which I'm loving, come on, Anthony, jump up and tear up that room and say what you want to say.
I'm saying what I want to say. Like I said, I have no emotions.
He's in a hotel. He'd have to pay for it if he did.
No.
Hunter says, okay, I'm court, though moms do sometimes manipulate their kids to make their dad look bad. Very, very true in a lot of cases.
That goes both ways for sure.
It does, but in the court system, I do believe the mom has more manipulative capabilities a lot of time to make the dad look bad because they keep the dad out of it. And, mothers have more power in a child's life typically. They have more impact. Whether it's a boy or a girl, it's a mama's boy or it's,
well,
the girl
in
is
those
just
situations.
Like mom. Yeah, at young kids.
The mother is very much so more likely to get sympathy from the courts than a man. A woman is more likely to get sympathy from courts in that situation than a man is, right? Because that's the mom. How can you take the child from their mother, right?
That's why the courts are like that too. For something the dad to the mom, not the kids. Oh, that's back to in addition to her comment. And that's
Brandon
one
just
thing
ran over and showed a graph from 2016 from the Census Bureau of the wage gaps, and every single category men made more money.
Of the ones they printed. They didn't do every single category.
It's from the Census Bureau. I'm just saying it's a credible source.
Okay. And what is that looking at?
I do have to say there's a lot more.
You showed it was just a white screen on there. I couldn't.
No, I know.
We
It's
couldn't
not
see
going to
anything.
zoom in.
Yeah, we couldn't see anything. The point is you're going to find whatever you want looking at the graph, but more information is definitely needed to find out what your graph is looking at in that case. You can't just find a graph, because I hate graphs online because they can show anything you want them to without information. Now, I am also not disagreeing at all that there is a wage gap. I believe there is a wage gap. I don't think...
Not once did I either. I just said I don't think it's as bad as some people make it out to be.
That we've got to redo
No, and
everything.
I'm just saying any wage gap is a fucking problem.
But you can't snap its fingers and make it disappear. At some point, you got to look at the progress we're making and say, soon enough, this is going to close. This gap is going to close.
I think it's taking way too fucking long.
fucking Gen Z, whatever you guys are. Okay. But no, I mean, that generation often does that because I had mentioned on the previous show, the world existed before you. And a lot of the younger generation right now doesn't realize that. They don't see the strides. They don't see how far we've actually come. It may have taken way too long in your lifetime, but it was existing for 4 of your lifetimes. And that's where you got to realize the strides that are making. And I think it's advancing further now because people are strong like yourselves and others that are willing to speak out. And I think that's really important to do. Michigan says if you pay support for a certain amount of time, you are screwed, even if you find out your child isn't yours and can prove it. Okay, that was back to him paying. I did not know that. That's kind of fucked up, too. So if you find out it's not yours after you've already paid enough child support, you're still got to pay the child support on it. Maybe it's an acceptance of responsibility thing. That's stupid. Rachel was here briefly. I was hoping she'd hop on. I sent her a link. She said, "Oh, snap, I'm an engineer. You should have put me on." I would have loved to have you on here because you would definitely be able to shine some light on this in the workplace and how you feel about your co-workers as well. Brandon said, "That's part of Elena that made me fall in love with her. She was incredibly independent. That somehow vanished along the way, but, Still love her, I guess." And she is amazing. And strong women like you, Elena, are what is going to make a difference in the world ahead. But you can't change the people that have been around for 50 years already. That's where your struggle comes from.
I'm not trying to change people that have been around for 50 years and think this way. I'm trying to change people that have been around for 32 years and saying it's not that bad.
Okay, well, I don't know anybody who that could be, particularly since that was a really randomly specific number.
Hi.
All right, Bill says child support 50-50 custody if previously married and both working. Whoever makes more pays unless they quit their job right before the divorce. That's what I thought it was. Even 50-50 custody. Okay. Brandon says, "Here comes the hammer story." It was the hammer story.
That was when I built.
Oh yeah, I remember. Okay, never mind. The TV stand that you did a great job that I'm sure came out perfectly in every way because a woman could never make a mistake. Now, Bill says it's a joke. Not women. Low-end shoes are cheaper than men's. Pants are cheaper. Go fucking Walmart. Like I said, it depends on what you're shopping for and where you're looking. When you go in the high-end spectrum of men's clothing, yeah, men's clothing is a lot more. However, the general, I would say, median of that is going to be more that women's clothes are more expensive. And when you go to low end, yeah, women get a lot of, like Walmart, yeah, women's are typically cheaper. It just depends on where you're shopping and where your taste is and where your life status is. You know, whether you are middle class or whether you are working.
That's what Gail Marie brought up, the pink tax. Like if you go into like a regular drugstore and you look at the cheapest women's razors and the cheapest men's razors, the men's ones are cheaper because the women's ones are pink, even though they're both fucking razors.
Does that have anything to do with the necessity of having these items, though? More than that. I mean, they go through a lot. They sell a lot more men's razors than women's razors. Not all women shave, but all men have razors. And they go through them a lot more than women do. And something that is not bought as frequently, supply and demand theory, is going to cost more.
I don't think that men buy less razors than women. Or I don't think men buy more razors than women do.
I believe they do. I think the amount of times where I do believe, I don't know if there's an actual number on that, but I do believe men buy more razors by far than women do. Women still buy them and need them. I mean, Anthony is a bad example. I don't think he's ever bought a razor. But
well, when I was younger, I did. Because that's how you look professional as a man.
And you got to keep that up on a daily. And when you're heavy stubble, you go through razors a lot quicker.
Yeah. I know, but then if you look at like society as a whole, I mean, it's changing a lot right now just because so many feminists are taking strides and not removing their body hair anymore. But society says women from here down should not have body hair.
In all caps, Bill's yelling at us. Again, if the women make more money, they should take care of the men and families.
I agree.
Okay, but do you not look down on the family? Do you not call a husband a deadbeat when you see that? When you see the woman making all the money and the guy stays at home? And you may not do this. You might be the worst example of saying that because of our conversations. I already know that about you. But a lot of them do.
I know a lot of people that think that way.
Yeah, completely. If the woman is taking care of everything, the guy is a deadbeat. The guy should be taking care of the family. And
you guys have the wrong friends.
This isn't friends.
Well, this is society.
This is people.
Right?
This is society,
this is the general population.
There's got to be something, Elena, as much as I admire you and all this, there's got to be a little broader vision of the world going around you beyond that. because this is a very common thing that happens. Even though it's not in your circle, like you said, you've got the wrong friends. No, these aren't our friends saying this. This is society.
No, I know, and that's where things need to change too. Is like I'm agreeing with that. If I made more money in like mine and Brandon's situation, when we had kids, he would stay home with the kids.
But there's the aspect, like he's saying, of self-image, okay, and how you look to the other people and your friends as well. Because when the wife's working in this situation, the wife's working on taking care of the family, the friends of the wife are the ones that are calling this guy a deadbeat, that are constantly fighting against him. So
Right,
his
and that's
image,
something we need to change also.
but I'm talking about right now. We need to change is true, but we're talking about right now. So his image is tarnished in shape of the friend, so he naturally wants to try to become the more masculine one to take care of the family, so that everybody doesn't look down on him. So what position does the guy take in this? Does he try to tell her, no, please let me take care of you, and appease your friends so they don't think I'm a loser?
That would just be financially irresponsible. If she had a higher paying job.
Well, it's not about what's best for the family. It's about the image that's presented. And he's right about this, Bill, and what Bill said, and Anthony was right too, that it doesn't work that way typically. A lot of people look down on him. And I know a lot of women in their 20s right now that want a guy to be the breadwinner. Even if they're both working, they want to be able to work, but they want the guy to take care of them. And that's sad because what you're talking about, Elena, that is a down step. That's moving downward from the goal. This is for the women growing up. So it has to change on both sides. And women have to realize that you can bitch all you want about, not you, but women in general, bitch all you want about being stronger and being independent. But until you do that and accept the fact that you're going to take that role as a breadwinner, you've got to kind of shut your mouth and deal with it the way it is or something. Or make a change. Because you can't keep saying it. You can't keep just saying, we're equal, but I want you to pay for me. We're equal,
Well,
but if we go on a date, you're paying.
I think most of the women that do consider themselves feminists and want to make a change and are doing all that would not be those same women that are looking down at the men that are staying home with the kids.
They're not, but the idea has to spread everywhere.
Yeah.
The idea has, and that's where it's not doing. And it's sad that these people, just like the women I'm talking about that would look down on that, are in their own tunnel vision, not realizing it's a new world. The same people who are looking at the world going, it's not fair, we've got to advance, we've got to take charge, are also tunnel vision and not seeing where it already has been affected and improved. What do you say, Anthony? Thoughts on that? Okay.
Yeah, what
Okay.
you said.
Okay.
I'm back to being sleepy. Pizza round 2 kicked in.
Start yelling again, Elena. Brandon says an average women in our sample that graduate with engineering degrees are less than $61,000 annually, and men earn above $65,000 annually. Okay. I can agree with that, and there's another wage gap right there. But
That's part of the graph he showed me. That wouldn't focus on the screen.
Okay, in our sample that graduated with engineering degrees. That's why I wanted Rachel to come on here, because she is an engineer, and she is there to find out if it's actually less or more in her case. Sadly, you have 1,000 companies that may go above and beyond. This is the problem with graphs and charts. But you have one company that goes way down below, that drops, and that automatically creates it. Or if every other company is paying equally, then those few companies that pay less change that average and make it seem like that gap is everywhere, which that's, I think, Anthony's biggest argument. In a lot of the gap is not everywhere that people think it is. But a graph, most people are not going to pay women more than men. Okay, on average, because the fight is right now for equality. That makes this periodically. But some companies are stuck in the way they're thinking, and they are going to pay women less, wrongfully so, for the same degree. Well, that's going to take that average number down automatically and create a wage gap that reflects upon all these industries that are doing the right thing, because one industry is doing the wrong thing. And I think when you look at graphs like that, you go, people in their head go, wow, every woman that's working as an engineer is making $4,000 less than a guy. Instead of realizing there's certain companies bringing that average down.
Yeah.
And since there probably is still a small wage gap that Anthony was referring to of like the 97 cents, it's already brought down a little bit. But it just goes a lot bigger. graphs suck for that reason because there's not enough, like you said, information given on these graphs to figure out what the qualifications, what are the work schedules, do they get it? Is there something in from maternity leave that causes them to make less of a wage? All that stuff is not included in a graph. Bill says, "Oh my gosh, it's a good thing I wasn't a panelist for this one." Probably.
Bill, come on, man. Come on. Take my spot. I'm tired.
Okay, here in the UK, they get paid half wages when they take leave. Okay, so there's the answer for Cole Orton on there. They get paid. And I think it's government mandated over there, I believe, in the UK, where it's not here. But a lot of companies still offer that. Some pay full maternity leave. Some pay 2/3. Some pay half. Bill says karaoke host women make the same money or more. Typically, that's in my field. Women make more money than I do. Well, not me, but most guys in the field. Well, it's because they're looked at. They're more revered. They're more adored. They bring in more business. Well, so they keep them longer. And the longer you keep a karaoke host, the more you're going to pay them, which kind of goes against my whole argument a few weeks ago because it doesn't really work that way. But in general, that's the truth. Because of how they do at the job, because of the business, because they get the repeat business, they stay there longer, they make more money. I know bars out there that just turn their head if a guy comes in to host their show because it doesn't keep the crowd. And that's all about the job, just like with teaching or anything like that. Women typically, the example for the Hazel Park teachers, women make more. I don't know if that's as true universally as more than Hazel Park, but I'm sure it exists other places because they've been doing the job longer. They've gained the trust. They get the raises. They get the salary increases on there. Men don't necessarily get the same thing. And kids often hate their male teachers more than their female teachers because of motherly instinct. So that's a good point, Bill. Gabe, okay, let's see. We're almost to the bottom of this. So they rolled in. Gabe's question says, the question would be, high salary jobs like sales or corporate jobs often require a sociopathic personality to succeed. Do you think there are more men in high level positions because there are more male than female sociopaths to do the job? Ooh. Yeah. I was like, probably. It's a good question. I don't really go with it because that's probably the case. I mean, that makes sense. I don't think that's really a sole reason for this. What about you, Anthony? You got anything to say on that one? Because I'm kind of like... I think you're muted. You are muted. There we go.
There we are.
No wonder I couldn't hear you. He didn't want us to hear us snoring.
No, this headset. No, I mean, that could very well be, right?
Yeah. I actually think that's
sales
the point.
positions, very, very interesting characters.
Could completely has to do with your basic conscience on there, especially in sales. Brandon, to me, toxic masculinity is about being a dick or jerk or being ultra type A because they are scared of being seen as feminine. But I mean that was the point of the sexist term in itself. Again, feminine refers to being like a female. You're scared to be like a female, so you're bad because you're a male or acting like a male. The term is just kind of sexist. Toxic behavior is a much better way of putting it, as Elena did. Bill says he still makes the greatest comments, though. I'm not going to deny that. He also says men don't make more money for TV show hosts. Oprah, Ellen, another example. And I think this is where Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong, where a lot of his arguments come in, that it depends on the field you're going into.
100%.
Because now, do you think that it is sexist that women, Elena, do you think it's sexist that women make more money in talk shows and women make more money generally in teaching than males do? Is that sexist as well?
I think with talk shows, specifically, it'd be hard to say because that's completely personality based and viewer based. But with teaching, like I want
qualification based.
I mean, I don't think your person. I guess
that's kind of a qualification for a successful talk show.
Yeah.
Yeah, but their shows are doing better because of their viewers, so they have more money for the show in general.
Because of the personality, because they're good at what they do.
I guess, but I'm
so
talking
they
about
make more money based on the fact that they're better, regardless if they're male or female.
Right.
Okay.
Because they're better at their job, because they have more viewers than other shows.
But in general, females make more money in this area.
I don't know that. That's two examples of all the talk shows in the whole world.
The minute he said Oprah and Ellen, you know that. I was like, I mean, they do. I'm like, he picked the right two. He picked the right two. Yeah.
But
In
yes,
fairness, he did.
I think with teaching in some schools, women might make more money than men, and I think that everything should just be equal. Like I don't think women should make more money than men. I think women should make the same amount of money as men. I don't think women deserve more perks because of their genitalia than men do.
See, this is where I actually disagree with you. I believe the women in teaching should make more money than men. I believe the women in these TV shows should make more money because they do their job well. And just because it's majority done by women, they deserve it. But the thing is, it doesn't work in reverse. You don't usually see women go, I believe the men deserve to make more money because they're better at welding.
But why do you
Because
think
they're
women
better at
deserve
auto
more
mechanics.
money? Why do you think women teachers deserve more money than men teachers if they're both awesome at their jobs?
I'm talking about as a whole. I'm talking about with the graphs and the averages we're talking about, where we're trying to figure everything in. I don't believe the same woman, same man deserve it, but I'm saying in general in teaching, the women deserve more money, not because they're women, because of the qualifications. It just appears that the women in that workplace make more than the men. You don't look at qualifications. But if you're looking at a different field where the men, in general, make more than the women, you don't look at the fact that maybe they've been doing it longer and overqualified.
I just think everyone should make the same amount of money in the same position. You're muted again.
You're muted again, but I'm trying to read lips.
That's asinine.
That you think men and women should make the same amount of money?
Two men in the same position shouldn't make the same amount of money. If one person, if in my field, right, we've got 4 guys that all have the same position, but we all make different amounts, right? There has to be a progression so you can make more money, right? So how do you determine? So if we have the same position, I'm going to make the same amount as anyone else in that position, no matter what.
Obviously, you get raises as a longer, like obviously seniority has to deal with that.
Okay,
Right, but if you and I started the same job at the same time with the same qualifications, we should make the same amount of money. That's what I'm
Agreed
saying.
with that.
Is not the
Agreed
sole
with that.
reason.
But the numbers that people are looking at are not based on the same time. They're looking at overall in that field.
Exactly.
People who have gotten those raises you're talking about. And if it's predominantly held by women, then it's going to appear women made more. Because it's not taking into account on the higher end. On the higher end, yes, I believe it's still harder for women to get some jobs. I absolutely do. I believe in some ways it's harder for men to get some jobs too. It's harder
I can get a job at Hooters.
I know, what the hell? And I got Hooters.
I mean, I can't get a job at a male strip club as a stripper. Like,
Well, that's
You probably
exactly.
could as a server, not as a
I
stripper.
said as a stripper.
But there's more female strip clubs, so you can be a stripper if you wanted
No,
to.
I know. I'm just that's my counter to that. You can't be a server at Hooters.
Well,
Well,
but a server is a little bit different than a stripper, right? Because a restaurant is for everybody. A male strip
Right.
club,
But
is
we're
where
talking
you
about-
see male
but-
strippers.
We're talking about Hooters.
But it's
Yeah, but you know what? Even in the regular bar industry, without going Hooters or anything like that, it's going to be more common for a woman to get a job and make more money.
as a server.
Women actually don't
yes.
make more money in restaurants as servers and bartenders than men.
It's more common for them to make
It's
more
more
money.
common to see more women than men.
Yes.
It is, but men make more money in the field than women do, on average.
Because we're better.
Okay, that works. Let's go to Cole Orton here. I don't think that's true, by the way.
I don't think it's
I want to move on to Cole Orton.
It honestly is true.
I want to move on to Cole Orton. He says, what do you think about benevolent sexism? I kind of brought this up earlier with chivalry, where women were given priority over men, holding the door open for them, or in the Titanic's case, it was the women and children first, because women were more important than men. Men were expected to be honorable and expendable. Good question. Really good question on there. Do you think that should go the wayside now?
Has
You
it
think-
I think
already?
that everyone should be equal. I think if I'm walking in the door first, I should hold it for the person behind me, regardless of their genitalia.
But if you no, okay, that's a different situation. That is, there is a person behind you, you don't know them, you're going to hold the door open. But if you're out on a date, for most women, this is where his chivalry he's talking about here. The guy opens the door for the women. Should that go the wayside now?
With my generation, people don't really like run ahead of people to open the door for them anymore. Just in general, I've noticed. So I feel like it kind of already is going away. And I also know with my generation, like when
Well, your generation
when
are just assholes then.
I don't think they're assholes. I think
They're
they just
monsters.
want equality. Like when I started dating Brandon, I asked him on our first date. So I tried to pay for the first date, and he was like, no, you're not paying for the date. I'm a man. You're not doing that. Motherfucker didn't know who he was going out with. So on the next date, I ran up to the server and gave her my card. It was like, no, I'm paying for this because it's my turn, because we're equal human beings.
Right, but you said your generation doesn't do the things that Brandon was already doing.
Brandon's older than me, and he was raised in the South, so it's a little different.
But is he not your generation, though?
He's not. He's technically a millennial, and I'm a Gen Z.
Oh, okay. Okay, maybe Gen Z has got different things that I'm not familiar. I am familiar with millennials, and I still believe that it's not wrong to hold the door open. What about women that get mad at those things?
I think that I would like. I don't understand getting mad over something because it was someone just trying to be polite. But I feel like with you guys talking about how there's some things that aren't manly and men could look down upon, I feel like if I ran ahead and opened the door for a man I was on a date with, they might be looked down upon. So I feel like that just goes both ways.
Well, let's take the second half of this comment, because that one really gets me in this case of the Titanic with women and children first. You're on a boat, and let's say you have a kid and Brandon's with you, it's sinking. How do you think that should go?
I think both of us should try our hardest to make sure the child's alive.
Yeah, but okay, children first.
Brandon.
Now it's you and Brandon. Child's already saved. It's you and Brandon.
It'd be a split decision. That's not something I've thought about. If we're both going down, who gets to live?
Okay, so then not you personally. You have a random man and his wife and their child, right? The child's on the boat. It only has space for one. Who are you sending? Not knowing anything about them.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Well, I disagree with that. I honestly, even if I had the woman with me, I would probably I'd jump in that boat. Fuck it. No, but I do believe in protecting your family, and I do kind of believe that the heavy protection job does fall to the man, because even though this is going to get some flack too, it is biologically true that men are stronger. They are more meant to defend. You know, that is how we evolved, per se. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a woman that works at the bar I work at that could beat up any man. Bitch got muscles that would kill another one.
Fuck yeah.
I mean, so they're out there. There are men that are stronger than women. But to take that protective role when you're physically capable of doing it is not necessarily chauvinistic. It is taking the role you've got because of your physicality.
One thing I don't understand, right? And this is going to catch me some flack, but I don't give a fuck.
I think this whole show is going to catch us all some flack. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to get canceled after this, but right? Men, women, different, right? Men and women are not equal. They are not. There are some areas where women are far better than men, and there are some areas where men are far better than women. That is a fact, right?
Okay.
There are many things that men do better than women, and there are many things that women do better than men. Why is that a problem? I don't understand why that is such a big problem with all of this. Because when everyone says equality, everyone, we're all the same. We're not, though. Biologically, we are not the same, men and women.
That is true.
There are vast differences, right? And even like genetically, mentally, metaphysically, all of that. There are vast differences between a man and a woman, right?
And please, I want
Is that a
to.
problem?
I hope that he's not saying this. I don't think he is. It doesn't mean that a woman isn't capable of doing the same job as a man, or vice versa.
No,
we know they're capable. We're just talking inherently. Yeah.
Right, but you have women in construction. A man, more times than not, will be able to outperform the woman doing that same job. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. Men are built to be stronger than women for the majority. Right? You have those select women who are just
now you have some
women, right?
And you have those wimpy ass men too. Trust me.
Right. So you have that crossover, but as for the most part, you're men and women. There's differences. Why can't we just embrace the differences?
I don't think people are trying to say that we're physically the same. I think the issue with a lot of things are just like straight up gender roles, right?
But what's wrong with gender roles?
What's wrong with gender roles is just because I want to be a mom doesn't mean that I should have to stay at home with them.
You don't have to, though.
You don't have
No,
to.
but that's the gender role.
No, but what he's saying is what is wrong with those who want to follow that gender role?
There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is that it's harder for people to not follow that because now those people are looked down upon. Like you guys were just saying, those men are now looked down upon if they're the stay-at-home dad because they're not the breadwinner for their family. That's a problem because the gender roles are so big in our society. And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a gender role that you guys make a joke because I built a TV stand. It shouldn't be people like you guys shouldn't like make fun of Brandon because he does laundry because I work more than he does.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like that's the issue.
For doing laundry. I do my own laundry. I do my own cooking, my cleaning because I live by myself.
Yeah.
Right. But when you come into a mutual relationship, there is an agreement. The man is going to take care of XYZ. The woman will take care of XYZ. There's nothing wrong with either of those things, right?
Yeah.
And what I've seen, right, and I'm not saying you in particular, but what I've seen in society on social media now, it's become such a point to make it bad for the man to want to provide, to want to have that gender role, and it's a bad thing for the woman to want to stay at home now, right? It's gone so far to the other side that now it's being looked badly when the man wants to assume the traditional gender role and the woman wants to do the same, right? I don't have a problem with whatever you want to do as your relationship, right? I have no issue with that. If you want to be the breadwinner and Brandon wants to stay at home, good for you guys, right? That works. If it works for you, I'm happy with it.
But you guys were just talking about how Brandon would get made fun of in society.
Well,
No.
saying personally,
That is his defense right now.
I'm saying personally,
He's saying it's a problem for it to happen. And I think that's one of the best arguments Anthony's ever given on this show, period. Because he's not arguing the point whether they can or can't. He's saying it's looked down as a problem. And just like we did just say, you're right about the men, because they would look at the men doing that as a problem. And he's asking, why is it a problem? Why is it a problem if a woman takes that role?
Because we need to get rid of gender roles. We need to stop teaching children gender roles. Because it doesn't matter. Because it doesn't matter.
Okay. I don't know if we're going to get there, but I'm actually in agreement. I hate to say it. I really am in agreement. It shouldn't matter. That's right. But it shouldn't matter if they take those roles either.
Right, but if we don't teach kids gender roles, there will never be an issue where a man will be looked down upon for being the stay-at-home parent. If we just got rid of it. Everyone should do whatever the fuck they want to do, and society needs to stop saying, no, this is what a man should do. This is what a woman should do.
I'm not saying you shouldn't teach your children that they have open opportunities. You should teach your children for open opportunities, but you should also, there's nothing wrong with a woman growing up saying, I want to be a mom like my mom.
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that either. I'm saying we need to just stop teaching.
But don't
I'm saying, don't teach this is what a man does and this is what a woman does.
You're right. But this is, to say this is what they do.
Growing up in a household where that mother is taking on the traditional role and the father is taking on the traditional role, it doesn't have to be out of their way taught. But by seeing their parents in those roles, they're going to be subconsciously taught that. And what's wrong with that?
Not if the conversation's opened up to those children. Like the way I was raised.
That this kind of patriarchy and matriarchy has existed for thousands of years, long before there was any form of sexism or teaching your kids to do it or whatever. It's natural instinct. Okay, a mother growing up and taking care of her children, well, the cave guy went out and did whatever and killed the dinosaur and brought it back, has existed forever. It's instinctual in a lot of cases. In some ways, don't you think that non-genderfying people is taking away that natural instinct?
No, because they have the natural instinct. That's what you just said. They have the natural instinct.
Right, but you're saying...
So why do we have to teach it if it's a natural instinct?
I don't think they teach it. I think they say it's okay. They don't teach it like they did in the 50s, where you're going to grow up and you're going to be a woman and you're going to have babies and that's your job, to stay at home in the kitchen, cook, clean, and do all that. We don't teach it anymore. But we're not talking about the people who are taught that. We're talking about the people that are grown up in this industry right now. That people are looking down on them. And maybe if we stopped looking down on other people like that, we wouldn't have so much to bitch and complain about on either side. If we didn't look down on the guy taking that job, we wouldn't have so much to bitch and complain. If we didn't look down on the woman for doing what she does, we wouldn't have so much room to bitch and complain. Why do we always bitch and complaining about everything and saying, if you're not doing it the way that I think is perfectly equal, you're doing it wrong?
Because that's how most people were taught. They were taught this is a man's job or this is a woman's job. The way I grew up, my dad worked 9 to 5, and then when my dad got home, my mom went to work until midnight.
Well,
Both of my parents worked full time when I grew up. So I never learned, oh, my mom does the cooking and cleaning. I learned whatever parent's home does the cooking and cleaning.
My mom never told me my job was to take care of my wife and kids or take care of the family, because as far as my mom was concerned, Dad was deadbeat. Dad didn't do shit. Dad was a bad person to have around. But on my own, my instinct says I'm the stronger one. I'm emotional too, but I know how to hold it in, and my duty, without being taught by anybody, because if anything, my mom taught me that the woman can do everything, like she did. But still instinctually, I'm like, I want to take care of the person I'm with.
I don't want the woman I'm with to have to deal with what my mom went through.
Yeah. Like, that's taking a role of being, from a guy's point of view, fair enough, because I understand that this is a different point of view. But we're not taking the role because we're better than women. We're taking the role because we feel we are fit to protect those we love. And we feel that the people we love, after seeing, in my case, a struggling mom, that I don't want, as Anthony said, my wife to struggle the way my mother did. So we take that role to make sure it never happens. And what he's saying is, again, we're not going to get anywhere with the wrong thing, because I think we're talking about two spectrums here for whether it's right or wrong, whether it's just teaching it or not. But the fact that we're still, even this conversation shouldn't exist. It really shouldn't, because you should not be mad because of what somebody wants to do. I should not be put that I am a bad person because I want to be a strong man for the people in my life.
No, and I'm not saying you are a bad person for that at all. I'm saying that if you wanted to be a stay-at-home parent, society would look down upon that, right? We all agreed with that, right?
Yes.
So if we eliminate gender roles, there will be no societal issue, because there will be no right and wrong. It'll be, this is how my family
works. Do you really want to live in a world where there's no right and wrong?
I want to live in a world where there's no gender roles, because it's unnecessary.
I get that. But the thing is you can't use labels for your argument, because that's all they are. They're labels. The feeling is going to exist either way. Okay, so we can get rid of the term of gender roles, we can get rid of any of that, but the feeling still going to exist, and people are still going to feel that way. There are still going to be women that want to be taken care of. At the same time, if you got a weak little guy, he wants somebody to take care of him as well. You know, an emotional metro guy, whatever you want to call him. I think that's actually probably about 15 years too old, but they want to be taken care of as well. And if there's a dominant woman, she's going to want to take care of somebody too. But it's not going to change just by eliminating teaching them. Suddenly we're going to just think we're all equal growing up. We're going to know we're not by our basic actions. We're going to know where we stand and who we should stick up for by just the way we're built as human beings. Can we get to these comments? All right, back to the Razor comment.
Sparks a discussion.
Oh, I know. I think we're going to stretch a little bit between them now. Because back to the Razor comment, multiple amounts cheaper blades on the Razors. Men's cost more for the disposables. That's when you go out with feminists, they still expect you to pay. Also true. I
disagree. That I don't think those women should be labeling themselves as feminists.
But they are, and that's his point. Is that they are. You know, that was my point of the tunnel vision thing, is we can throw these words around all we want to be what we want, but we're not looking outside of the world, and it doesn't apply to us. That has been going on since I was a kid, where women, we want to be able to serve and do everything a man can do, but not in the army on the front lines, please, no. We want to do everything a man can do. No, we don't want to do this hard labor. And that was a thing during that fight that does not exist anymore, but I did also see that fight growing up. Brandon says, if it was just the few that skew the numbers, this wouldn't be a society issue. It would be a lawsuit issue for the singular company. It is a lawsuit issue for many companies out there. Yeah. A lot of companies do go through this, but it doesn't change. And again, that goes on the shoulders of people having to fight for it. And they're not. They're just announcing their wages. And since they can't discuss wages, sometimes they don't even know it. It does exist, but that skews it without it having to be a lawsuit issue, because they can't publicly claim the wages they're making, and the people who take the surveys can't go after a company when they take the survey because it's based on privacy. Look at the graph solely as misleading. That's my link. I linked the source. There's a whole study behind the graph. I don't think we can put links on here. Joe says, getting late. Yes, it is. Bill says she jumps away from the stuff she can't win the argument. I don't think that's true, Bill. I really don't think that's true.
What did I jump away from? Elaborate.
Actually, let's see. That's 8:15.
Well, that was a while ago now.
Yeah, that was a while ago. I think we're okay on that one. Brandon says Tucker Carlson is the personality of wet blanket and he makes buckets because he compared this back to the TV personalities, making it TV as a higher viewer and carrier independent. And again, any job, anything we're talking about on here, it does not work for every single person, but we're talking about the majority because all your surveys and everything else is based on majority. Okay, your surveys of what they make is based on majority. Sure, there are some that make way less and some that make more, but we're based on majority. And you said Oprah, again, he said Oprah and Ellen, so nobody else comes close. Add them all together. It doesn't matter. That's a rich bitch out there. He says, if you want to actually search in the right way, the average in the United States, women are making money equal to men in the same fields. I'm curious on your source on that, Bill, because I would actually be fascinated for that, and I know that Anthony would be. Brandon says you can't make those claims the right way without sources. Again, true. That's why you can't just show a graph and have your answers. The fields have to do with percentage of both in that field, and that is what is missing actually from a lot of these surveys. It has to do with the percentage of each one in that field, and they don't. They look at the percentage of everyone in that field and then compare male to women instead of looking at the percentage of men versus percentage of women versus percentage they make. That is missing from a lot of charts, graphs, and studies. That was very smart, Bill. I like that you're actually smart sometimes. Restaurants, men are usually cooks and managers. Women would make the same money if they held the same position.
I was a restaurant manager and I made less money. We just talked about that. Next.
Yes, we did. I'm going to say, I don't know if that's true. I'm going to go.
I was also a cook and made less money, so.
And sometimes, but like I said, there are exceptions to these rules. That it doesn't mean I don't know how true that line is either. Elena, I'm going to take your word on that to believe that because you've been in those fields that, yeah, you probably were treated unfairly. Female bartenders make much more money than men. That's because we're pigs. We are. We pay for tits, honestly. We pay. The fact that they make more money is actually a sexism thing in itself.
Yeah.
It really is. I hate to say that, but it is true. And now it has to do with where you are from, and that was going back to because Brandon was from the South. All right, so we're going to continue on here. Female bartenders make more on average for a sexist reason, though, which we just covered, because men tip them because of sex sales, so that's good. I was raised in the deep South, a military household. I was raised very old school values, not the same as the majority of people our age. Again, back to the point we're making. Cole's here, and we always like Cole. He says, I see what Anthony is saying brings to mind is sport. The Olympics, where women sportsmen, for example, were angry because trans women were allowed to compete against them. Thus, they have a biological advantage. That the main reason women got their own spots category in the first place because women are at a significant disadvantage.
What the Olympics just did, though, is that they approved trans women to compete in Olympic sports if they've been on estrogen for 2 years, because at that point they're they no longer have that like muscular advantage over men or over women, cis women, I should say.
Does this go against any of these other arguments about guys being paid for jobs they can do better?
For letting cis women in the Olympics or trans women in the
Olympics? For the
Olympics?
fact of what you just said. You said they wouldn't allow them unless they have made their bodies equal to that of a man, pretty much, or close enough to it with estrogen.
Well, if we want to talk about sports, we could talk about how men's sports make an astronomical amount more than women's sports do.
Okay.
That's a fact. We can all agree with that, right?
Well, absolutely.
Well, yeah. But is that a problem?
But why is it their own category?
Because
why are women's sports their own category if they deserve the equal pay and the equal all this and equal
I think women deserve equal pay. I don't think women are physically stronger than men.
I'm not asking about you thinking that. I'm asking in a general term. Do you think that still works? Women claim equality, and they can do anything a man can do. That's what I'm saying on this. You are not. You're giving a very good-sided view from this. It makes perfect sense from what you're saying, but I'm saying in general this is what they're looking at. Because he's saying in the Olympics aspect, they weren't allowed to compete until they did the thing where you're taking it so much there. They are separating it. Now, the argument of not being allowed to compete and what brought all this fight up was because women were saying, why can't we? We're just as good as men. So who created the sexism? The women trying to compete are saying we're just as good as men, and the governing body said, only if you build your body to be as good as a man. And you claim it's your generation or our generation as people in society, but is it not the governing forces that are actually having more impact on sexism? Good answer. Anthony?
Well, I don't think trans women should be able to compete with women.
Then you're transphobic.
I'm really
No, he
not,
said with
though.
women. Because at the same time, they got
How is that transphobic, right? Because
Yeah,
you're
I don't
saying
think
that
that
their
was.
estrogen levels are the same as women's, but what about their testosterone levels?
Yeah.
There are then at that point that of a cis woman.
Okay, because speaking of the Olympics, I read
Can
an
we
article
clear
about
up
the
cis woman really
weightlifting.
quick?
Cis woman means assigned woman at birth, because just saying woman, trans women are women. So if we're going to talk about trans women and regular women, it's more appropriate to say cis women, because trans women are
I just
women.
want a clarification on that. I've heard the term before, but I just want to get clarification. Okay.
So I read an article today because I didn't have much going on, and that talked about the biological and the requirements in the Olympics, right? Because that's a big thing right now. And the testosterone levels that they are permitted to compete in is still 4 times that of a natural woman.
Really?
So,
Well, that does make sense. And
There's
I don't
also
see-
been, just to argue that, there's also just been advantages and disadvantages in sports from the beginning of time. If we want to make every sport completely fair, we need to separate everything into height and weight classes, not men or women classes.
but they already do that with a lot of sports with men, and
Yes.
they have your weight categories for wrestling and all of that, right? But there's a big difference between a man biologically and a woman biologically. So that is why there are completely separate categories for both men and women. And with the trans women and trans men, that creates kind of a circumstance to where how do we handle that? Because as far as I'm concerned, right, I'm sure if the transition is done earlier in the life, they will be closer to, a natural female, right?
A cis woman.
I don't like that term, so I'm not going to use that.
Why don't you like that term?
I'm not
Because
fond of that
I feel
term.
like having to create a special term for someone who is what they were assigned at birth. A woman assigned at birth is a woman, right? I have
That's
no
a cis woman.
connotation- I have no connotation to. I have no issue with the trans community, right? But why?
You clearly do, though. You're stating that right now.
I don't, right? My issue is, right, and this is something I feel quite strong about, right? So we have trans women and trans men, right? And by definition, a trans woman is a man who transitions to a woman, right?
I don't think that's
I gotta
the exact definition, but okay.
There is no exact definition anymore.
But okay, so whatever. So a biological.
It was a person
man
assigned
who
woman
trans-
at birth. Or
I don't
a
like
person that was
trans woman.
assigned man, a person that was assigned
So a
male
man
at
that
birth.
transitions into a woman.
Okay, the verbiage is different, and we're talking about definitions. So if we want to get into
Well, I
definitions,
wanna-
the verbiage is
layman's
different.
terms.
Before, okay, can we
Layman's
stop?
terms.
I want to stop right here, and I want to get to the actual point Anthony was going to make more than the verbiage he's using.
Right. Yes.
If
So
we
a
can.
man that transitions into a woman is a trans woman. A woman that transitions into a man is a trans man. Why do we have to change what we've been calling a natural born woman and a naturally born man to fit? Right. Why
Well,
can't
because
we
now
just
you're
let
already
that-
you're already saying natural instead of cis. You're already putting a different word in front of it.
Because-
Cis is less
Okay,
syllables. It's
because
easier to
if I
say anyway.
Because if I just say, okay, so you have trans women and women and trans men and men, I don't see an issue with that.
Okay, but other people do.
So, but hold on. How they feel, why is that more important than how everyone else feels?
Because you're already going through all of this. Like, you're saying, like, no, I don't like that verbiage. I'm going to call a woman as much as I want. But you're already saying natural woman instead of just woman anyway. So what's the fucking difference in just saying cis woman?
I get where he's going. I'm going to stop this a little bit because we're getting more into the transgender category, and I'm trying to stick with the sexism category if we can tonight. So I want to move a little bit away from that if we can. I'm going to say I don't approve of the cis just because cis to me sounds like sissy, and sissy has always been an insult. Okay, so that's why I don't like that term, personally. So aside from that, I want to go to the actual sexism aspect of women playing in sports, not the trans playing in sports. So if we want to hit that, I'm all for it. Okay.
I made my point.
Like that women make way less money than men in sports?
Just popularity that we were talking and what they should be allowed to compete in, etc. Women being allowed to compete in sports. Colorn did bring it up. It was a good point with the biological advantage with trans women, so I wanted to address this comment. Surely, I just don't want to go off the deep end with the trans portion of it, because that is an entirely separate topic. And it's really hard to change other people's minds there in either direction. It's just, we're going to go to some comments. So he says, just about the way you were raised and the time you grew up, drop the mic. And yes, the best comments until you bring the mic back up. He said, get there, Anthony. Bill says trans men compete in women's sports. Also true, back to the trans comment. And Brand says, because by saying natural by definition means the other and unnatural, which is the stigma that cis is working to eliminate. Can you say uncis? I mean, there's always going to be something that's going to be opposing.
And then, right? Like that's.
I do have a little bit of issue with that, but I also have an issue with people getting upset for using that terminology. Why learn the entire new terminology? You're trying to make everybody happy sometimes. And we're constantly, I have seen in the last 10 to 15 years, so many different changes of what we're supposed to call people that it's almost impossible to keep up anymore unless you're one of the people in that group. That no one,
but I also feel like it goes back to things were changing before, like we were all born too, and people would say words that we didn't use or we did use before that, so it's always changing. It just happens to be something different this time.
But it's changed a lot in the last 10 15 years, not generationally. It's changed a lot for everybody in 10 to 15 years versus a full generation passing. Okay. It's really hard. It's not worth starting a fight over in that point or getting upset with somebody, but it is a good thing to talk to people about that and explain exactly how they feel instead of just jumping down their throat, because even as Brandon says, by saying natural, you're saying that others are unnatural. Okay, I like natural applesauce. It doesn't mean regular applesauce is not natural. Okay, it's just how you word it, and people get way too upset. 40%, I don't know what the 40% was, what we were talking about in that. What was the 40%? He says.
What's the 40%? Oh, he's writing.
Oh. Okay. She needs. Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, I don't think you're wrong in your fights right now. But is there anything else you think that you're suffering? We've gone through the wage gap. We've gone through sports. Let's try to move a little bit off of that right now. Is there anything else you think society doesn't see, being a woman, Elena, that you have to deal with and suffer through on a regular basis before we close this out?
I mean, there's, like,
or is it mostly the wage gap?
It's definitely mostly the wage gap, but there's other things too, like you guys just said, sexism in a bar. I'm getting looked at differently working in a bar just because I have different body parts than someone else. I'm looked at as unprofessional if I walk into work without mascara on. It's like small things, and it all adds up.
But
and it does make a big difference.
I do. I know that was the start of the show, but I want to hit that. Isn't it something that women typically enjoy to make themselves as beautiful as possible like that? Did they not bring upon that stereotype themselves?
I mean, maybe, but it's like been taken too far. Like, yes, I enjoy wearing makeup. Do I enjoy getting up 30 minutes earlier than I have to in the morning just to go to work? Absolutely not. I don't think that something like that should be looked at as it's a woman's thing and it's unprofessional if she doesn't put on makeup before she goes to work, if that makes sense.
Okay, I'll go into Brandon's 40% comment really quick. And again, I want to not stay on this topic too long, even though it is an important one. 40% was the number of trans people that attempted suicide because they're viewed as unnatural and wrong. It takes no time out of my day to use their terminology to save a life. By having an argument calling yourself trans in any way, people are going to deem it unnatural, whether you use cis in front of it or not, whether you use natural in front of it or not. It will, because they're already separating. And I am that person that just wants to live in a world where you are what you want to be, but don't get mad at somebody for not knowing. If you're a woman that becomes a guy and somebody addresses you as a guy, don't hate them for it. Because you are looking the part of a guy, you look like a guy, good job, you did it. You know, be addressed as a guy. The thing is, I'm not saying that you should make fun of them, but people saying, you're meaning the same thing when you say cis woman or you say born a natural woman. They have the same definition.
I get that it's the same definition, but I think it's the actual word natural. When you say that I am a natural woman, you're telling trans women that they're not natural, that they're not same.
I get your argument on that,
Well,
but what he is saying is not meant as an insult, and you have to look at both sides. That he's trying his best not to insult.
He's not
them
trying
as well.
his best, because not insulting would say cis.
He doesn't know the cis term.
I just explained it, and he still says, no, I'm not using that. That's the problem. You were educated, and you still said, I will not do that.
Yeah, but it doesn't instantly work, okay? It takes time to figure that out. And there's probably going to become a point, maybe he will be comfortable with that term, maybe he won't. I mean, you're dealing with 32 years of learning in a different way. Somebody saying it one time is not a reason. You explained it well, but just stop getting upset. I'm going to give Brandon credit, because he's pointing out a good reason why that hurts so much, and he's trying to bring up something with suicide and stuff, and that is a good, more powerful reason to say not to use it. But it's not... People confuse being offending with trying to be offensive. Anthony was not trying to be offensive, I don't think.
I agree with you. However, after it was explained and he kept using the term, that's when it changes and he is trying to be offensive.
But he didn't try. He said something that he's used to saying. Yes, it is okay to correct him. Yes, it is okay to say that's a little different. It's not okay to constantly get upset and think the reason he said it again wasn't because he's using a language that he's been using for 32 years in a different pretext.
No, it is, because he said, I won't use that term because I don't like it.
I don't like it either. I don't like the word cis, because to me, cis has a different meaning. Okay, I'm going to be straight up, not to offend anybody else, but maybe you don't want to use the term cis. Born a man, born a woman, I think is probably the best way to say it, period. You were born a man, you were born a woman. That's my personal opinion. Not you were born a natural woman, not you were born a natural man, not you were born a cis man or cis woman. You were born a man or woman. You now live as a man or woman. You may be a trans for it, but trans is to go to the other gender. So I don't think it's wrong not to address him in that way. All right, so that's mostly it. Brandon's here. Okay, well, we just knocked out the sexism and trans all one night. We didn't have a trans show yet, but we probably will now.
Touch the surface on that one.
That's a really, really big one, actually. So.
Yeah.
The one thing for sure is we've got a hell of a lot to learn. And no matter what everybody on this panel does. I have a lot to learn about things that are changing in the world today. Anthony has a lot to learn too. And Elena, you've got a lot to learn too about what's going on around you. But so does everybody at home and everybody who commented. We are such a closed-minded society. We often can't see the things going on around us. And sometimes when you're going through something, you feel that it is so big you fail to see that it's not the majority around you going through it, and there has been change. And when people are making progress, we often fail to see how much progress has been made and look and grasp so hard for that final destination that we do not see how far we've actually come. Sexism is still a problem in this country. I will not deny that at all. Sexism is. Women are still looked down on for certain jobs. Women still are underpaid for certain jobs. But many women have achieved a lot, and sometimes that fight makes their achievement less meaningful because you're acting as if nobody has achieved it. The problem does not lie with the women who have achieved or the women who have thought that we've got so much more to cover. It lies with the people who hire them. It lies with the people that pay them. It lies with the people that promote them. Those people, if you're watching, you're the ones who need to change. Because women every bit equal as a man. Blacks are every bit as equal as white. Gays are every bit as equal as straight. We're all human beings. We all deserve love, respect, and equality. Just because we're not capable of doing something as good as another gender, another sexuality, or another race doesn't mean we do not hold the same heart, mind, and soul within us. We are equal inside. We need to stop looking at how unequal we are and realize change starts with us. And it's not by hating everybody that thinks differently. Elena, you're very strong-minded. You're very strong-willed. I love your arguments. My ears are bleeding a little bit from the fierceness of them, but that was great. Keep that passion. Look at Elena's passion and keep it strong, keep it alive, because that's what we need to overcome this. Women need to stand up for themselves. One thing Elena brought up that was totally true, women don't fight enough, and they need to. When you're underpaid, you don't want a graph to show you're underpaid. You want you to show you're underpaid. You need to make a stand. You need to make a difference as well. Because as long as you let it fly, other people are never going to see it. And then you're going to have somebody like Anthony as well who doesn't see it as well because women accept it. Take your place, work hard, grow strong. It may not happen in our lifetime, but we will achieve equality across the board for everyone if we just try. But never forget our uniqueness is also what makes us special. Anthony, it was really good to have you on here. I knew we'd get to it. Oh, absolutely. I knew it was. It was glad to have you back on here. You're definitely, like I said, you bring up the counterpoints we need as well. And not everybody likes to hear what you have to say in those, but you know what? So many people are thinking it. So many people are thinking about it. Thank you, Hunter, on there. So if we can eventually learn, this show is talking to everybody out there, but we need to listen to the show too, and we need to listen to each other too, and we need to change a little bit as well and realize that not everybody is out to get us. Not everybody knows the problems we're facing. But thank you again for being here. Please don't forget while you're here to like, share, subscribe, and follow Ear Shoulder Voice on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We're on all those. You can follow our shows, live chat during the broadcast. We respond to everything you say live. Might take us a while to get to it sometimes, but believe me, we get there. You can also call into the show simply by going to earshouldervoice.com/join. And our open forum is coming up on Sunday. So we got another open forum coming up for you. It'll be our last open forum until after the 4th of July. So be here for that. That's where you can bring up absolutely anything you want to talk about. We can even hit this trans thing again, but damn, that's going to be quite a fight if we do. But we can talk about anything that's on your mind, any topic you just need to vent, you need to get off your chest, or if you just want to brag about how good your day's been going, we want to hear that too. But you can't just, you can chat on the show, but that's not the only place. You can talk to us anytime, simply going to earshouldervoice.com, going to our social network and posting on our page. People, like-minded people like you, will help you out with your problems if you have them, or just give you a nice pat on the back if you need one, or a shoulder to lean on. Or go to our Facebook page and you can message us with any problem you have. One of us will be glad to talk to you about it. We're always there for you. Thank you again for being here, everybody. Return for our next topic on Wednesday, which is playing the part discriminating against portrayals. Another discrimination show. I probably shouldn't have back-to-backed them, but I'm going to. And what that's going to actually be, it's going to be about one of the big things that's been happening, especially in TV and stuff, is gay people playing straight people, white people putting on blackface to play a black person, men playing female parts, vice versa, and the gender, race, and role changing of different stage plays, stuff like that, everything from Hamilton on, or movie remakes where they change that. We're going to talk about all that. Do they deserve the flack that they get, or is it actually moving in a new direction with society? So we'll discuss all that too. Thank you for being here. We'll see you all again Sunday, hopefully, and Wednesday here at Ear Shoulder Voice. You all have a great night.
Bye.
Bye. Hey guys, Keith Liffin here for Ear Shoulder Voice. While you're here, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and follow so you can be notified of all our upcoming broadcasts that we'll be bringing to you live every week. Or head on over to our brand new social network and website, earshouldervoice.com, where you can be notified of all our show schedules, suggest new topics, join others like you in a judgment-free zone, or be a guest panelist yourself. Holy shit. Holy shit. That was intense. That was intense. The passion was just beautiful. It was amazing.
It wasn't that intense.
No, it was. It was good. I like to see people get into it so much. It's really rough. It's a really rough topic. It's a really tough topic. I'm sorry Gail Marie had to leave because that was really good discord with her on there too. Between you, she did have to go though. She said she'll be back again soon, but she just wanted to hop on real quick because we miss her. She was great.
Mm-hmm. It's good having her.
Yeah, it was definitely good having her on here for a second. So, did you learn anything? Anybody? I mean, from anybody in the comments, anything like that? No?
I don't learn anything.
Well, I did. I learned that I'm right and everybody else can't stand being wrong. All right.
Yeah, I wanted to say that, but I just didn't want to go there because I
I
figured that's your job. Your job's to be right.
It is. Elena seems like on the perturbed side right now a little bit.
Yeah, she's upset. I mean, but it is what it is.
I'm not upset. You're just a different person than I thought you were.
I don't think he is. I think, sometimes it is good to talk about stuff like that, but it can get really heated sometimes in there. But I don't think anybody means offense to anybody. We're all good people at heart, and that's the thing is when you talk about something serious, you sometimes forget the person that's actually inside. Well, okay, Elena and I are good people at heart.
I try to tell everybody I'm an asshole. They just never believe me.
I believe you're an asshole. I don't question that. But you're a good asshole. Okay. And we all need a good asshole every once in a while.